Hi everyone, welcome back to another installment of Leading Women. So my first question, Priya, to you is that who was the first woman you looked up to and why did you want to be like her?
So I think the first impressionable woman in my life was my grandmother, my mother's mother.
Okay.
I have to give you a little bit of a background. I come from a Tamil Brahmin family, born and raised in Madras.
Okay.
And for a significant part of my life, I've spent, till I was about almost 13 and 14, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother. And she used to wear this 9 yards. Till her death, she used to wear the 9 yards. And she was extremely, extremely particular about food, particular about, the fact that she won't touch garlic and onions. And she was extremely religious. When you say I look up to a woman, I also want to caveat that it's not just I took away some amazing points from her, but I also took away things that I don't want to. Right. So in that way, she influenced me both on the positive side as well as, wanting to not do certain things, right? Like you look at a person and you say, okay, this is 5 things that I won't do. She's never taken a penny from all the children. She's in fact given a lot of money in pockets for the education of her grandchildren. And it amazes me. One of the biggest things I took away from that woman is with such a paltry amount, how did this woman manage to give each of us lakhs, right? And that's the biggest takeaway. She probably was the most uneducated, but the smartest money manager I've ever seen, who lived by Warren Buffett's theme throughout, which is frugality, live within your means, right? And, save. And the power of compounding is what I learned from her, because she would put away money and not touch it.
Coming to the next question, Priya, have you become more risk averse or risk seeking as you have progressed in your career?
It's a very my life has been quite ironic that way because I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My father has been an entrepreneur. My husband's a first-time founder, but my dad had a very large business loss. So very early in my life, I said, look, I don't want to be like him because I don't want to see so much money being made and so much money being lost. But ironically, that's exactly what I wanted to. That's exactly what I did when I left my stable job to become a founder. I think that risk mentality somehow is almost like genetic in my family. But having said that, I've always been a risk taker. And the couple of things I learned when you become a risk taker and what's different for me now compared to then is the ability to understand downside and willing to accept what is that level of downside that you will take. So as you grow older, I think the biggest thing you can pick up is to look back at your life experiences and start putting some frameworks of risk for risk taking. I have learned to kind of quantify my risk, start looking at frameworks better and be more educated, if I might say so. Right. But fundamentally, I've been a risk taker.
Wow.
I have not been averse to doing things which very few people agree with me on.
Mm-hmm. So, Priya, coming to the next question, what are some moments of self-doubt you have had in your journey and how did you manage?
So I think for me, self-doubt has been like earlier, it used to be like the biggest thing as a founder is the lack of validation, right? Because when you're working, your validation comes from a job promotion or like you get a better hike and you have your 5 managers telling you that you're incredible and all of that. But when you're a founder, it's incredibly lonely, right? Of course, when you have a co-founder, there's an emotional dependence and you can fall back on. But as a journey, and if you're a fairly smart person and you believe that you're in that a block of people who are fairly smart and you got to, you've done reasonably well in your education, you've gone to a decent college, very often you keep asking yourself, okay, what am I doing? Is this right? I need that sense of validation, which you don't get for a very long time. Those moments, I have fine-tuned the self-doubt to saying, have I become obstinate? Have I become so married to an ideology that I'm not willing to smell the coffee? Or is this something that goes in the line of perseverance, which means shrug this off. Today is not as bad as it seems. No day is as good as it is. Just keep going and keep pushing.
Great. What will be the biggest challenge for the generation of women tonight?
I have a 12-year-old daughter. right? And she's going to be the next generation. I think the biggest challenge for the new generation is the ability to cut out the noise and find yourself. That to me is the single biggest challenge. I think my generation was at the cusp of technology, but at the same time, there was enough time for us to process the kind of world that you are living in and my daughter is going to come into is a very noisy world with opinions, information, data, perspectives, false, myths, everything thrown and mixed together and served to you like a shepherd pot pie. You need that incredible clarity of thought, confidence to cut out the noise and find yourself and not do things because you want to fit in, but it truly represents you as a person.
Um, what lesson or story can you share from your experience that is unique to be told?
The one time in my life where I felt very gender specific about some of my struggles has been the time when I used to travel from Chennai to Bangalore for literally 3 or 4 days a week. Leaving my 2-year-old behind or 3-year-old behind. I've had an incredible support system, I must admit. And I have really nothing much to crib about. But, there are days when actually for me, the guilt was about the fact that I'm doing this and not wanting that maternal instinct of having to be with my kid throughout. I was guilty about not feeling that as much as other mothers around me were. I think the biggest amount of support has been to be able to talk about what you feel to whoever you trust and figure out that, look, your journey is your journey, right? And you should be extremely comfortable with your journey.
What do you think is the best decision you have made?
Definitely to have co-founded Vidyartha, definitely to be an entrepreneur, to have been so naive and completely, wide-eyed and romanticizing entrepreneurship and jumping straight at the deep end. I think that's the best decision I've made.
Why do you think empathy is such a key part of leadership? And
because there is, as a businesswoman, because there's an economic benefit to empathy. What does empathy mean? I think the biggest myth or misconception is that empathy means is mutually exclusive with showing weakness or not being tough. That's the biggest myth. What does empathy do? It creates a safe space for people who work together to be more self-aware, to acknowledge and not worry about somebody judging them of their weaknesses. Now, step 2, what does that do? It allows you as an individual to grow and apply your mind share towards a solution oriented. Okay, these are my weaknesses, so I'm going to work on my weaknesses rather than the mind share towards putting up a front, a bravado, managing your office politics, managing how to spin the story. Imagine the wastage of mind share. So to me, empathy brings an economic benefit. There's no other way to do it.
Next question, Priya, is what are some assumptions or biases you have noticed as a female?
I don't know if it's got anything to do with a female or a male. I will just tell you some of the assumptions that I have come across. And fortunately, I must also acknowledge that luck, serendipity, whatever you call it, has played greatly to my advantage. I've always been at the right place at the right time, including my current platform. It's been incredible for me to not really fight for some of the values that I stand for. I know there are many women who have to, or men who have to fight for the values. I've never had that problem. So having said that, couple of things that I have found, as an assumption is, which I highlighted earlier, is showing vulnerability is a sign of weakness. No, it's a sign of being real, right? That's the biggest, myth or assumption that I've seen or biases that I've seen. Saying I don't know makes you look less intelligent. It doesn't. And third one, there could be absolutely no downside for transparency, according to me, but very often the bias is being too transparent, there's a downside. But of course, you have to nuance this when you go to a negotiation, when you're putting all cards to a table. I'm not getting to that level of business negotiation kind, but I'm talking about being transparent to your colleagues, being transparent within a team, being transparent to yourself. To me, there's no downside to being transparent. In fact, even in a negotiation, consistently, that's been a strategy that's worked to my advantage, which is being downright truthful because there is a threshold, and it's always good to let people know the threshold, right? And then when you bring that, what I've often seen is the other side opens up, and the conversation becomes more meaningful than about assessing each other, right? And it really cuts the to be honest.
Thank you so much again, Priya, for joining us today.
My pleasure.